You're listening to a download of soul music from BBC Radio 4.
The beginning of the piece has a certain sense of foreboding. From the very first C natural octave in the bass, there's a great sense that a great deal of energy is about to be unloosed on the listener.
The opening of this ballade, which is ostensibly in G minor, it starts on a C natural, which for that period was daring. To actually not begin on a note that was related in some way to the key of G minor was a real kind of audacious statement at the time.
At the very beginning of the ballad, it's a short 7-bar introduction, and it starts in what sounds like a completely different key. So from the very beginning, Chopin is already opening a completely new sound world, I think, when you consider the piece was written in 1836.
It really is a completely original idea, and it goes like this. And until that point, we're in A flat major. And then suddenly, it becomes harmonically very ambiguous. We have, in fact, descended a semitone into the main key of the piece.
The Ballade in G minor is really the journey of a man's soul, expressed in music.
This piece, I feel like it goes beyond just listening. It's a complete psychological experience for me.
You know, it has so much in it. It has highs and lows. There are moments when the music comes almost to a standstill, moments when the music is so agitated and so excited that it just almost goes off the rails.
If I had to choose 2 words to describe the piece, it is sublime anguish.
About it is this sense of narrative that you get. It's like watching a film. I mean, I can see a girl in a straw hat with feathers walking through a forest and trailing her fingers through tinkling water, but then something happens, and in a relatively short space of time we are transported from one mood, one scene to another, and it's music as narrative, which I find really delightful.
My name is Eddie Villimoria. I was born in Bombay of ancient Persian ethnic origin. We had a wonderful Grundig hi-fi in Bombay, And we had lots of records of Schubert and Schumann and Beethoven and Mozart, and most especially Chopin. And the Ballade, well, I first heard that on my little wind-up record. From the first moment, even as a child, I can imagine myself just listening to it and being powerfully overwhelmed by the sheer feeling and expression that the work evoked.
My name is Pete Roskam, and I am, I guess you would say, an amateur composer. I'm the type of person I like to go out for walks at night, helps me relax. And it was actually last summer, and I was just walking. It was clear sky. I could see all the stars, you know. On my MP3 player, I had what I guess was Chopin's Greatest Hits type of CD, and I had ripped it and put it on my MP3 player. And it was on shuffle mode, where it just randomly picks a song to play. And while I was walking, the Ballade started. At first, I really didn't like it. It starts with, very slow octaves, and I'm looking down at it, and it says it's about 9 minutes, 45 seconds long or something like that. And I couldn't understand how this could be considered a masterpiece just based on octaves. It just seemed so boring. So I skipped it and went to something else, and I think the Fantasy Impromptu started, and I was satisfied again. But the very next piece that came on again, randomly, was the Ballade again. So I figured I just had to give it a shot, and so I did. I don't know, it was kind of a surreal experience for me. It was a fairly cool summer night. It was probably about 1 in the morning or so, and I was just walking through a park, and very clear skies, and it was like one of those perfect moments, at least for me.
And it all then culminates just a couple of minutes into the piece in this second theme, which is an incredibly plaintive and innocent and romantic melody, which once you get it in your head, it's something that just informs your every step in life, I think, from then on. It's so special.
The first Ballade of Chopin has a nobility and, in some parts of the piece, almost joyful kind of climax to it, that always sinks back to this feeling of some kind of impending tragedy. I nearly said doom. I don't think it is that. I think it's less melodramatic than that. It's very noble. It's very Polish, actually. There is always an undercurrent of tragedy in the works and art of Poland, and that shines through this from beginning to end.
It explains life, really, that the way most of us live our lives. There are some people out there who just have everything go their way, by the luck of the draw or the roll of the dice, however you want to put it. But I think the majority of us have those moments that we're so down, and also those moments where we're so up.
When I was 12, I went to a summer camp, turning 12, and my gaze turning more fervidly to the fairer sex. For the first time, I developed a huge crush on a girl in summer camp in that summer. It was a 6-day camp. And the first day I noticed her, and by the last day it was just absolute torture to leave the camp and to have my parents drag me away. My heart was just in absolutely new places, such as it had never been. My parents dragged me away from camp, and I created a calendar where I could mark off each of the 358 days until the return to camp the next summer and the chance to see this girl, Chrissy Privatera, one more time. But later that same summer, maybe 2 weeks or so after the camp, my family piled into the van. It was a big family of 5 kids, to drive to Michigan, which is quite a drive with all of us. It was pretty much a 2-day operation. And my grandfather had made a cassette recording of Arthur Rubinstein, the great pianist, playing the first Ballade of Chopin. He had copied from an old record onto cassette tape this performance, and he told my parents that he felt that we would like it. And so they put it on in the car while we drove across the country, and I couldn't believe the way that it hit me. And I felt that, unbelievably, this composer, living in Poland and France 100 years ago, 150 years ago, was somehow describing this miraculous young woman I had met. He was somehow describing all these feelings of love and infatuation and absolute passion. And I just sat there looking at the outside landscape passing by the van windows as we drove, and just missing this girl and feeling lonely for her, and hearing this music was just driving my heart to distraction. And but it was the next year that the camp came and went, and she didn't come back to camp. And here I was still listening to this piece and finding that it was moving me more and more. It was then that I realized that I had been very stupid, that the piece stood far and above any person or any particular love that would come and go. And I suddenly felt as if I had somehow escaped through some secret passageway or into some secret chamber or some secret magical wood where human beings were not supposed to visit. This incredible sense of getting to live in the world of this music as I listened to Rubinstein play the piece over and over. And my parents were very, very gracious. They continued to rewind the tape for me and play it over and over every time that I asked. And the piece goes back and forth between that first somewhat ominous opening motive and this romantic second motive, which comes all told 3 times. The third time is the part where I would ask my father to rewind the tape for me over and over. It was the one spot that I couldn't wait to come back in the piece every single time. And this is where it comes to this incredible E-flat major arrival with a rolling arpeggio in the left hand, and the melody begins to leap in just unconstrainable, irrepressible ways that just seem to embody everything that a young person's unfettered, unscared love is all about and can achieve. It was then that I realized that some human beings had done something really quite incredible and quite unmatched in any other aspect of my life. everything else seemed to come up so short in the human experience compared with this type of communication and expression that I was suddenly getting to be a part of by listening. That's when it really hit me. This piece really hit me, and it occurred to me that I really wanted nothing else out of my life but to live inside that world, and so then it really, in a way, my life became quite single-minded from that day. I simply was fixated on how to get from this place of being, at that time, 13 years old and having very little training, very little understanding of piano playing at all, to making a life in it and devoting everything I had to trying to be a part of that magical world that I suddenly got to stumble upon. I don't know if I would have gone into music if my grandfather hadn't recorded this Ballade of Chopin. It was really the singular turning point that changed my life, really flipped it over entirely.
My name is Dr. J. Hess, and I'm Artistic Director and President of the Hess Conservatory of Music here in Miami, Florida. My mother was a professor of music, and I grew up loving the Romantic period. As a matter of fact, I must say, when I was very young, I would listen to various fantastic pieces, among them the Ballade, the number one, and it would affect me so greatly that my mother, who loved music obviously also, but who loved me, I hope, more, would break the record, so that, of course, she would come in and she'd find that I was crying. And, of course, I would go right out as soon as I saved up enough money and buy the record again. Remember that there's a very thin line between happiness, beauty, and sadness. Some of the most magnificent music, even Chopin, is very sad, and that's very beautiful. So, yes, Chopin and this particular ballade has been with me all my life. The ballade was part of my mother's repertoire, and it was one of her favorite Chopin. I think she probably preferred the G minor ballade to any of the ballades, and that was one of her favorite Chopin. And I had been living abroad a number of years, and I returned the very day that she had already become comatose. That's the reason I came back. And when I entered her room, she was in the house. Of course, we had nurses round the clock, etc. And she, as I said, was comatose. And I saw absolutely no recognition. She did not recognize me in any way, shape, or form. And I wanted to try to get through to her. Obviously, it was a very emotional time for me. And I went to our Steinway, and I sat down, and I started to play the first section of the ballade, and then I stopped, and I went back to her room where she was with the nurses, and I took her hand. All of a sudden, out of the blue, and what a shock, she murmured, Chopin Ballade, number one, G minor. So apparently, even though she was comatose, the music was so deeply ingrained upon her that it pierced that cloud that she was under. She did not recognize anything else. I started to talk to her to see if I could even get a response through the eyelids, Nothing, absolutely nothing. So that indeed was the last statement, the last anything that she uttered. And by the way, she did pass away within a few hours after that. It probably will remain with me until the day I die, that I was able to pierce that veil, that cloud, through the music of Chopin. But then it was her life. It was her life. And I guess it was that deep inside of her that at the very end it came out.
I've literally been practicing it since I first heard it. I bought the sheet music for it, and I practice it pretty much every day, some parts, as much as 8 hours a day on some days, and as little as 10 minutes on a day where I'm not doing too well.
At the moment, I'm re-practicing, if I can put it that way, the Presta con fuoco, the final coda, which, I will never get remotely perfect, but it's not a question of perfection. It's a question of approaching perfection. The joy-making activity is the process.
It is actually a technical tour de force as well. I found myself particularly in trying to capture the right quality in playing the coda, the last 2 pages or so of the piece. You have to practice actually literally probably hours and hours to get it just right. It's worth the effort because in the end, audiences, if they're able to see you playing it, can find it astonishing to look at an artist playing some of the passages in this particular ballad. You need great physical strength. There's moments when you do actually need great physical strength in order to keep on top of what you're playing.
How many times in life, how many pieces are there in the world where one would spend hours and hours practicing just one bar? Such is the worth and such is the value of the piece.
This piece of music has actually made a difference in my life. It's helped with healing. It's also given me something to do for a year. It's given me something every day that I can work on, and even if I only improve my accuracy by 1 note each day, that is progression, albeit slowly. And so it's helped me a ton in that way.
The very end is unique and absolutely extraordinary. What a vision. A vision of something we can't identify. This swirling scale that starts as a rising chromatic scale and then a turbulent one that descends again back onto a bottom G. Somehow the G means everything, and it's very hard to say again why, but the G being the tonic note. It is extraordinary in tonal music, as opposed to the music that started developing in the 20th century, how extraordinarily important the key of the piece actually is. That we'd arrived on a G natural after all of those harmonic progressions and all the different moods of the piece, and this gigantic scale. One single note means so much. It's quite amazing. It's then followed by the slight reference to the opening theme that comes twice, interspersed by 2 very difficult scales, big, huge rhetorical gestures that go the full length of the keyboard, and then this amazing octave passage that finishes the piece, which there is no parallel of in any other piece that I know. And I'll just play the last few bars. How final can you be? It's just so extraordinary. It is so obviously on an objective level a great work and a very original statement. It's also something that if we're at all interested in music as a child, we will hear very early in our lives, which is what happened to me. I would say that the same thing applies to the last movement of the César Franck Violin Sonata, for example, which I can't explain why it evokes so much in me, but every time I hear it, in fact, when I play it, I'm almost out of control. There's something about that. Many people say the same about the Rachmaninoff Second Piano Concerto. Something that happened in their lives associated with it, maybe that's what it is. And if it is just as simple as it's something that got through to your subconscious when you're very young, then that just goes to show how important that is. And that applies to anything you learn. It will always be there if you've learnt it at that stage.
And I think that is such a powerful ending. It leaves you with a feeling of satisfaction, and it keeps you enlivened until the very end. And at the very end, it's almost exhausting just to finish the piece because you're so excited and the emotion is so high that when you finally play those last G's on the low register of the piano, just emotion is surging through your entire body, and it's almost exciting just to end and then to wait for that last note.
When a work of tragic implication is over, I suppose you might expect to feel down. But actually it's a form of exhilaration. And that's a tribute to its nobility, I think. Perhaps it's a feeling somehow that we've overcome it, or that we've expressed it, and that is a form of, in layman's terms, getting it off your chest. Perhaps this piece was getting it off Chopin's chest. He did it another 3 times and called them all ballades. And they all have this feeling about them. They're just great works. It's as simple as that.
At the end of it, it's as if you take a great breath, you inhale, and then you sigh out. I have a great sense of wellness, a feeling of wellness, of satisfaction, of fulfillment, that it is the world. It is the world.
If you enjoyed soul music, you can find other programmes to download about music and musicians on the Radio 4 website.